Hey, welcome back. It's Ryan here, and we're doing another magic homework where I take an old magic book off the shelf and learn something from it. Yes, it can be done. Today's a little bit different though, because actually the trick that I'm doing it's one of my bread and butter tricks. There's the butter, and there's the bread. So it's my bread and butter. Yeah. That's one set of bread and butters. That's a second set of bread and butter. That is a third set of bread and butter. And I know you might be noticing that that's actually a peanut butter, but no one calls this a wheat bread. So I don't know why we make that distinction. Got the bread and butter, 4 of each, 8 cards total. And in fact, I'm going to share. If you were here, you'd hold out your hand. I'm going to give you one set of bread and butters there, and in fact a second set, and you make a sandwich out of that. Now, that leaves me with 1 bread and butter and 2 breads and butters. You'll notice too I'm using the fresh bread for this, not toast, because this is not a crummy trick. No, this is pretty slick. In fact, a little oily. I notice now, oh yeah, look at this. 1, 2, 3, all 4 peanut butters. Smooth. And that makes me completely nuts, which means you've got the dough and, oh my, look at that. Oh no, I've loosened the lid, which means, oh no, look at that. Allergy alert here. We've got a whole lot of peanut butter bread for you. So that's the trick. Hang on, after the break I'll talk about where I found this, a little more about this, and I'll tell you why I think this trick is my kind of jam. So the book of the day is Small But Deadly by Paul Hallas, the Packet Trickster's Handbook. This book is entirely about packet tricks. We're not quite sure where the line is between a packet trick and a deck trick. I don't know. But it's focused on tricks that use a small number of cards. And this is a really interesting book because it's a bit different than what you might expect from your average magic book. This is the story of packet tricks. And it's a very personal story from Paul's perspective. It's not an academic, dry, listing of tricks. It's a talking about the evolution, the history, the people involved in the story of packet tricks, all the way back to the very first packet tricks from DeLand, going through people like Alex Elmsley and Nick Trost and Brother John Hammond, and all these pioneers of packet tricks and what they contributed along the way. So it's this really beautiful unrolling of the story of packet tricks. And along the way, Paul points you in a lot of directions. This is not I wouldn't classify this as a book of tricks. There are some tricks in here, but I don't think it's the primary value. I think this is primarily a historical perspective on packet tricks. But, as I said, a very personal one. So Paul points you in the direction of some of his favorites as he goes through each type and each genre of packet trick. Things like twisting, or, the trick where all 4 cards change to some random thing. Those different classifications of packet tricks, he points you out. I like this version in this book, and this version in this book. So this one is going to send you off in all sorts of directions. Already it inspired me to look up something else in another book. So I really enjoyed it for that purpose. The tricks themselves exemplify each genre, but this bread and butter one is the one that stood out to me. And he talks about this too. There's a chapter on cartoon packet tricks, which is when you have cutesy little pictures drawn on cards, which he points out that a lot of serious card workers would, frown upon. Oh, that's child stuff. But he points out that those cutesy little pictures and those silly little stories, and, people like Juan Tavares does silly little stories with silly little pictures. He points out that really connects with an audience a lot more than just cards. Because if you think about this bread and butter trick, you could do it where it's like, here, I've got 4 tens and 4 queens, and you hang on to those 2, and they're going to change into aces at the end. It would be the exact same trick, but entirely unremarkable. I think people would remember the peanut butter trick a lot easier than they would remember the ace trick, in my opinion. So I think these have great value, and Paul points this out too. They have especially good value when you're working for audiences of all ages, for kids and older folks and people who don't play cards. And this, I think, is going to open a lot more doors, more welcoming if you're doing strolling magic at a family event. This is going to put a lot more smiles on faces than, hey, let me show you these 4 tens and 4 kings. So I wanted to point out a couple changes I've made to this trick, because if you go to the book expecting this, it's not going to be there. Not quite the same. The biggest change, I think, Paul's bread and butter trick. This is not butter. With Paul's trick, it is butter. Mine is peanut butter. And I changed that. It's just, it's one of those things where I didn't think about it too hard. It just kind of all worked out that way as I was just playing with the ideas. And it's just, I don't try to do this, but every time I'm learning a trick from a book, this is the beauty of learning from a book compared to learning from a video. A video, you see what they do and you mimic. You try and replicate, you try and imitate what you see on the screen. And it's just a direct path from that picture into your hand. You're trying to mirror it. But a book, you have to interpret through yourself. You have to read it. You have to interpret it in your mind. It does a lot more loop-de-loops and swirls around in your head for a while before it comes out into your hands. And in that process, it's going to change and it's going to personalize. And that's why I think learning from books is going to result in a lot more interesting magic than just trying to imitate a video. Anyway, this is not meant to be a tutorial. That's not what I do here on YouTube. But I am going to point out a couple changes I made, not in a teaching way, but to give you a hint, just so you know. First of all, the initial display of the 8 cards, I changed the rhythm a little bit, and I think it works so well for this presentation because you're showing in pairs. So I pull off a pair of cards, and the packet just is no longer important for that moment. I'm focused on this pair of cards. And the next pair of cards, that's the star for a moment. And the third pair of cards, that becomes the star. And by breaking up the rhythm like that, it really disguises what is sometimes a bit of a bold technique for that initial display. And the final one, just pause for a moment to focus on this and make a joke about wheat bread, I think, if you call that a joke. I comment to draw attention to that final card. And just by doing that rhythm in pairs, really, I think, helped the technique a lot better. So that was a very subtle change, just a personal handling of it. The other thing, and I have to go through this whole thing so I get in the right state. So you get a bread and butter, you get a bread and butter, put that under your hand. This is where I made a big change. I made a change to the handling. What I was wanting to do, in the book, Paul just shows I have 4 cards, 4 blank back cards. I wanted to show a bread in order to make another joke. And in doing that, I found out that I can actually get a really nice display here of a butter and a bread, which is exactly what I'm supposed to have in exactly that position. And in fact, I can show a butter and a bread in exactly the way that it should be. So this is the perfect display of exactly the state of affairs, which reinforces what they have in their hand. I couldn't ask for a better display than that. So I was really pleased to discover that little moment. So it's a little bit different in the book, but I think it really reinforces the effect that's about to happen, where I now have all 4 peanut butters. Now, Another big change with my peanut butter, and this is again how ideas just kind of start to unroll. If you just start pushing that, the ball is going to start rolling on its own. So this kind of happened just as I was in. So now I'm completely nuts. It leaves you with all the dough, and that moment to signify the magic. So I have a change. Now, Paul talks about having a surprise thing pop up, but he does it at the very end as a little bonus kicker. I'm using it to cause the magic, as if, oh, geez, I wasn't expecting this. Now, every single bread. I was just trying to do a simple transposition, but things have gone awry, which I like that little bit of plot twist, motivated by the cards. So I'm really happy with how this all came together, how it all, jellied. And the last thing is, if you're going to do this table to table, which I think it's a great table hopping trick, you need to be able to reset. And I haven't figured out the perfect solution, but good enough solution would be just as these cards are and everyone's reacting to it, you can just do a quick little shuffle of the cards and you're reset. And that's it. You're good to go. So that's pretty good reset, just in that moment. And that's it. That is Paul's bread and butter trick from Small But Deadly. I'm over here doing my magic homework. If you enjoy watching these little tricks, I think my goal is to pull things off the shelf that people have either forgotten about or never knew about in the first place, and show you something new that's off the beaten path, away from the hype of the magic industry. And I hope you enjoy this little trek through the bookshelves. If you do, hey, I gotta tell you, I gotta do that thing where I say like and subscribe, because it really does make a difference to what I'm trying to do here. So thank you for your kind attention, and don't forget, you gotta do your magic homework too. I'll see you next time. Oh yeah, right. One more thing, because I know people will ask if I don't mention it. Where do the cards come from? You can't get these, as far as I know. Paul manufactured them back in 1997. I don't think they're available anymore. And his was butter and bread. I made these, obviously. I had to make them myself. And it is, it's a cardstock, so a thick paper. Got a bit of a snap to it. But I just run it through my printer. So I found these pictures, and I talk as though this is all really easy, but it's not necessarily that easy. It's easy for me. I have a background in graphic design. I do a lot of paper crafting stuff. So for me, this was like a half-hour project. For you, it might be more challenging, but it's just cardstock printed out. And then in order to have the cards handle really nice, paper itself will stick or not be able to be smooth enough. So this is laminated with a plastic, so it's got a bit of a slippery coating on it. So that is how I make them. So it's just laminated paper. I cut it out because I was only have to do a few cards. I just used an X-Acto knife and a ruler to slice up my page. It's just a single sheet, 8.5 by 11, single sheet to get all the cards. Slice them up with an X-Acto knife, laminate them, trim the corners, and that's it. Sometimes you gotta make it yourself if it doesn't exist. So, sorry. There's nothing to it but work. Thought you wanted to know.